I'm Ryan, this is Roles in the Family, and today I'm going to be reviewing First Orchard, a game for very young kids about working together cooperatively to collect all the fruit before the pesky raven gets it. I'll have a link to this game down in the description below. That's where you can support the channel and also check out the game for yourself, but let's jump into the review. The gameplay in First Orchard is extremely simple. On your turn, you roll the die, you get to pick the matching fruit off of a tree and put it in the basket. If you roll a basket, you can choose any fruit. However, if you roll a raven, then the black raven will move one step along the path, inching closer to the fruit that remains on the trees. If you can collect all of the fruit before the raven reaches the end of the path, you win. First Orchard is one of the first games I would recommend when introducing a toddler to board games. Its simplicity means it will likely get outgrown fairly quickly as kids get older, but I can see kids up to age 4 still enjoying it. There aren't really any necessary prerequisites to introducing First Orchard, but some of the key concepts include color recognition, taking turns, and rolling a die. The nice chunky wooden pieces are also great for the target age range and don't pose any choking hazards. Regardless of how old you are, there is something inherently fun about rolling dice and seeing the randomized outcome. First Orchard could be a kid's first exposure to this concept, and it is enough to get toddlers excited about what result they are going to get each turn. At this young of an age, even the simple act of picking the matching fruit and dropping it into the basket is something that kids find fun. It is a very tangible activity, and those big wooden fruits feel nice and substantial in their little hands. Each time the raven moves, the tension goes up a little bit as the kids see it getting closer and closer to the end of the path. And for kids that are anything like my son, they may even enjoy seeing the raven move and be rooting for him to eat the fruit. As an adult who loves board games, it is cool to see a game that is truly simple enough to work well with the youngest of kids. Where most children's games would have you wait until they turn 3 or 4 to get started, First Orchard is a game that lets you share a fun experience and introduce them to the joys of board gaming at age 2 or even earlier. There are some kids' games that are kind of on rails and just proceed to an inevitable outcome, so it is kind of nice that First Orchard has the unknown of whether you are going to win or not. Yes, there isn't hardly any influence the players have in that outcome, but when you play a game like this over and over, it helps when it plays out differently and even has opportunities for dramatic comebacks. Being a game for the youngest of kids, First Orchard is introducing every little gaming concept from scratch, and one of the most fundamental is taking turns. And not only does learning this concept help within board gaming, but it translates really well to other scenarios where they are sharing toys with other kids. Color recognition is another major concept here. Kids will have plenty of repeated practice in identifying the matching red, blue, yellow, or green fruit. Another fundamental gaming concept is rolling a die on the table and then acting based on the result on the top of the die. This serves as a building block for any other games that use dice moving forward. Additionally, this may be a child's first exposure to the concept of winning and losing. Learning it in a cooperative context removes the competitive edge, but still gives parents the opportunity to teach their kids how to have a healthy attitude whether they win or lose. It is kind of inevitable for a game targeting 2-year-olds, but there is no doubt that it can get a bit repetitive to play First Orchard over and over. We found that having a few games in rotation at this age was helpful for keeping our sanity. And it's a little thing, but towards the end of the game, it is possible to have a lot of die rolls that do nothing because the rolled fruit is already all in the basket. You can pretty quickly take turns to get past it, but with just one fruit left, half of the sides of the die are essentially skip your turn, which can be a little disappointing for a 2-year-old. And now let's get to my personal rating for First Orchard. So when I'm thinking about rating kids games, I'm really looking at it across those 3 categories of what do the kids like about it, what do adults like about it, and kind of what does it teach to kids. But it's also very specifically for what age group it works really well at. And when we're talking about the 2-year-old age group, or even a little earlier, that very first introduction to board games, there's not a lot of options or a lot of, strong options. And when I'm looking at through that lens at First Orchard, I have to come in at a 9.5 out of 10. I think it is one of the best games that you can get for, the very first games that you're going to introduce to your kids. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I've touched a lot on it in this review, but just the way it really boils it down to the simplest concepts that's making it very accessible, but there's still some really good concepts happening here. The rolling of a die and understanding like we do something based on the result of this. We're taking turns, and at the end, we're going to win or lose. Like if the raven gets here, that's a different outcome than if we finish all the fruit. So I think it just works excellently. I find that having played it so many times, at least the randomness of it has it stay a little bit fresh of what's going to happen this time. I mean, I think I'm at 75 or so plays, and I've seen games where the raven didn't move for the first 90% of the game, and then at the end we roll, 5 ravens in 7 turns and lose. And as a parent, and I guess as the kid, it's kind of fun to see how they react to that. But it's at least, fresh and different. We've seen the comeback the other way. I also am, a board game nerd that tracks all of my board game plays, and kids' games are not safe from that. So I have tracked every game of First Orchard I have played and can tell you the exact win rate that we have over, 75 games. And it's right about at 76%, which is actually a pretty good spot, I think, for the odds to all land for how often you're going to win this game. You're winning more often than you lose, which is nice for a 2-year-old, but it's still... you lose enough that the wins feel exciting and there's still some unknown of what's going to happen. So I think that's a nice balance there. It's one of those games that's going to define a season, right? There was a season with me when my son was, 2, that we played this so much, and you get a little sick of it as you're, rotating with some other games. But it's honestly a pretty short season before he was kind of ready to move up to some games that had a little bit more going on. And I just look at First Orchard as such a perfect first building block for, setting that foundation so that we could get there. And for that, I look very fondly upon it. I look forward to playing it with my younger son, who's just now, coming up on 1.5. So he's getting close to that age where we might start playing around with it. And it's a great presentation. Haba did a really good job of the pieces are just nice and chunky. This is a game that's going to last in my collection. So really has worked well for me with my kids, but ultimately want to help you decide if it's a game maybe you want to check out. If you're looking for games for kids that are a little older or have already played some board games, there may not be enough here to hold their attention. But if you are looking for a very first board game to introduce your 2 to 4-year-old to board gaming that does a good job of teaching fundamental concepts while providing a fun cooperative experience that you can share with them, then First Orchard is one of the best we've found. Hey, thanks for watching. You can check out First Orchard through the link in the description below. And if you're interested in just other games that may fit this age of 2-year-old introducing a kid to board gaming, I actually have a whole video on my top games that I recommend for 2-year-olds. You can check that out here, and we will see you in the next one.